All right, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. We are so glad to have you all here today. We will be getting started very shortly. But welcome, everyone. Please, those who are on, give us a hello. Let us know where you're from. All that jazz. Welcome, welcome, and welcome. Hi, Mom. I'm so glad that you're here also. Come on in, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. As everyone's coming in, my guests, my friends, they can go ahead and unmute themselves and sing greetings also. Deacon Foster, good afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon, I'm about to say.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Hope everybody's having a good day.
We'll give it about a few more minutes and then we will go ahead and get started. 2 more minutes and then we'll get started. Hey, PJ.
PJ, hey.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I don't want to belabor the time. So I will start off with introductions. I am Pastor Daniel Cobbins. I'm the digital pastor at the Field, Charlotte. Today we have with us Bethany Wherry and Kayla. Can you both introduce yourselves and tell us a little something about yourself?
So my name is Bethany Wherry. I have been a member of the field for long time. We're not going to say how long because I'm going to keep you guessing about how old I am. All right. Um, I am an educator. I am a lover of family. I'm an administrator, and life gets stressful pretty much all day, every day. So conversations like this are my favorite kind to have. I'm very excited to be here. I'm very honored to be invited to Life Beyond the Pew. It's my first time. So thanks for having me, Dee.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Kayla. A lot of people know me as KK. I'm actually third generation. I also think conversations like this are very important. This is my first time with the Life Outside of the Pew as well, or Beyond the Pew, sorry. I work with the children. I'm a children's church leader as well as the event coordinator for all of the kids. So our Easter egg hunt and stuff last week was amazing. And I love doing stuff like that. And I'm just excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, everyone, again, I'm Pastor Cobbins, digital pastor here at the Field, Charlotte. And I do want to welcome you to the second, but the first official podcast or webinar, Life Beyond the Pew. So, why Life Beyond the Pew? So, it comes from a deep belief that while our worship begins in the sanctuary, our faith must meet us in everyday moments of life. We know that challenges like grief, depression, anxiety, which we'll talk about today, obviously, loneliness, and burnout don't wait for Sunday morning. They show up on Tuesday afternoon, in hospital rooms, in silent car rides, and at midnight when the house is quiet and our minds are loud. So, Life Beyond the Pew was created to be a space where we don't just hear the word, we apply it. So, this series gives us a chance to talk openly about life's real struggles and equip ourselves with faith-based tools to face them. It's about moving from inspiration to transformation, from healing, from hearing to healing, and from the pew to practical peace. So, again, we are here today to dive into what many of us have experienced in quiet, unseen ways, anxiety. So when there shows up as racing thoughts, sleepless night, and a constant sense of unease. Anxiety can leave us feeling overwhelmed and isolated. But the good news is this: God sees us, God cares for us, and God offers peace that surpasses all understanding. So, in our session today, Overcoming Anxiety, we'll explore not only the emotional and mental weight of anxiety, but also how faith, scripture, and community can offer real support and tools for navigating it. So, whether you're in a season of anxiety yourself or supporting someone who is, we pray that this afternoon will offer encouragement, clarity, and a deep sense of God's nearness. Pastor Harris, good afternoon, babe, boo, boo thing. Hello, hello,
Hey,
good night.
Lola.
Hey, sis.
All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and go into our first question. When you hear the word anxiety, what comes to mind? And how has it shown up in your life personally?
Um, Anxiety comes to mind. I'd probably say nervousness because as a kid, when we would dance or if I presented something, I actually didn't know it was anxiety. I thought it was just nerves. And that's a really good way to think of it is like, okay, if you're having nerves, or that's what we used to call it, having nerves, and now it's definitely being defined as anxiety because that's what it is. Um, I actually did not know I had anxiety until my last year in the Air Force. And trying to cope with that as well as being an airman and not knowing a lot about it was definitely wild. So that's the way it showed up in my life.
Um, when I hear the word anxiety, what comes to mind for me is like my thoughts racing, just nonstop what ifs, what could possibly, overthinking is how people try to say it, but mine is like overthinking on hyperspeed is what comes to mind when I think of anxiety. And I mean it's shown up in my life as a compulsion to overachieve in an effort to eliminate the worst case scenarios that I cooked up in my head during those anxious moments. Um, yeah, it's wild.
So for me, when I hear the word anxiety, I just think of crazy, craziness. It seems like nothing is going right and everything is happening all at the same moment. I don't get a chance to pause. How does it show up in my life? I, similar to Bethany, and my wife can attest to this, I have in the past, I would create scenarios about how everything could go wrong and not how everything could go right. And I fixated on all of those things. And so
Mhm.
because of that, I was always in a battle with myself, trying to figure out how to calm my nerves, how to do all these things. But that's how anxiety has come up in my life. And family, for those who are coming in, these are questions for you to all to reflect, and you can put in the chat as well. Um, so our next question: how has your faith shaped the way you respond to anxious moments or seasons? I can start. So I know for me, I I struggle at times with seeing God in my anxious moments. Um, I know what the book says. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but in my own reality, oftentimes my faith is second to my anxiety at times. This is safe space, so we're being transparent. So
Mhm.
oftentimes
Mhm.
my anxiety uh, trumps my faith, and so I struggle at times to find ways to anchor myself in my faith when I'm anxious, because in those moments, the last thing I'm thinking about is God.
Mhm. Cause I'm gonna be real. In my anxious moments, me and God be beefing a little bit. I'm like, okay, but why? Okay, but why? Like, I don't need to be your strongest soldier today, right?
Right.
Okay, but I'll be real. Like, I'm with you, D. In those moments, I'm really not like my first reaction is not a holy one. It's a human one. And so I'm like, okay, but why? Oh, this is frustrating. I don't understand this thing. What if, right? That circle that happens in my mind. But my faith shows up when I seek wise counsel, when I counsel, whoever that might be. And I ask God, okay, God, what do you want me to do? Am I crazy? Am I doing something? Like, am I looking at this wrong? Help me understand. Give me perspective. And I trust the faith in them that I know they already have, right? I know they've already got a relationship with God that is solid. So when I ask for their counsel, I know they're going to give me that when I can't find it for myself.
For me, dealing with it came with a lot of coping mechanisms because right away it was just like, go to therapy, which I thank the Air Force for and God and everything else like that. But I would say, like, I had an anxious moment yesterday where I could feel myself overthinking. And the person that, like, Bethany is like, I know a person that's like completely rooted, which is my grandmother, Deacon Joan. And I'll be on the phone with her and I'll just be like, I don't understand. Is it? Nope, you're okay. You're okay. You're okay. And I imagine that God is telling me those things, like versus me telling me those things. So it won't be an immediate prayer. It'll just kind of be like reassuring myself through him, like, hey, you're okay. You're okay. Don't go there. Do not go. Because I feel like with anxiety, there's definitely different levels and there can be a tipping point. And so I lean on him so I don't go over the tipping point, and I forgive myself when I do go over the tipping point because I do
Ooh,
realize it's a human reaction,
yeah.
and it's something that is, and I will say I definitely struggled at first with the whole anxiety depression thing because it's like, well, if he exists and he loves me, then why would he let me go through this?
Mm-hmm.
So that is definitely something I would say I struggle with still, trying to find an answer to that. But for right now, it's that's more anxiety is like, where did this come from? It's like, no, let's just cope and let's, deal with the moment right now.
Right.
So let's see what some of the comments are saying. Um, my wife says, I'm with Kayla. It manifests as nervous, like something is wrong or something is about to go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The other Miss Cobbins says, I agree. When anxiety hits, I forget about God and I have to
Mm-hmm.
keep talking and praying. And so that's for a lot of us. We have to remind ourselves in those moments that, God is with us. God is walking with us. God is talking with us. God is telling us not only are we God's own, but also that it's okay. Um, Pastor Johnson said, there are times my faith has resulted in a self-imposed shame, forever being anxious or having a need to process through all the things and feelings manifesting simultaneously. And then I remember there's no shame in needing to tap into God's peace when I need it. And then she goes
Ooh,
at the end of it says that's what Jesus died and rose for.
that's it. Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's
That's
it.
it.
That's it. Then my wife says, scriptures, and the passage that comes to mind for her often is, do not be anxious for nothing or do not worry. And we
Mm-hmm.
will talk a little bit about our favorite scriptures that we use to navigate our own anxiety as well. So our next question that we have is, have you ever felt pressure in the church to just pray it away? And how did it affect your journey with anxiety? So, I mean,
Woo!
Yep. Woo, on that
Okay,
one.
the hairs on my arms literally started standing up. The hairs started standing
yeah,
up, y'all.
yeah.
I was like,
Oh,
peace, clock it.
Like
like,
the church's go-to answer a lot of the time is to just pray it away for a
Mhm.
variety of things. We won't go into all of them because we will be here much longer than the time that we have assigned for this. But to make a long story short, yes, there have been
right.
times where church folks have just said, well, pray it away, baby. God's going to take care of you. God's going to look after you. And it's not to say that those things are not true, but not everything can be prayed away. Jesus himself said, when dealing with the child who had an unclean spirit, when the disciples asked him, Lord, why couldn't we cast the spirit out? Jesus says, this requires fasting and prayer, depending on the translation that you read. But it requires at times more than just prayer. It requires some actions of us. So,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, we definitely have felt pressured by the church to pray it away. And how has
Sure.
it affected your journey with anxiety? It makes me feel at times, like Pastor Johnson said, that What am I doing? Maybe I'm not as good of a Christian as I think I am.
Mm,
Because if this little thing called anxiety, if I can't get a hand over it, control over it, then what does that say about me? What does that
mm,
say about my walk with God? What does that
mm,
say about people who looked up to me as a model Christian? What does that say?
mhm.
So, what do you all think, ladies? We'll go to the second one because we'll go to that second part because we already have the general consensus about praying in a way.
Kay, you want to go first or you want to go second?
Uh, you can go first.
All right. So it's affected my journey because I've been a pastor's kid, specifically pastor,
Yeah.
child, my entire life, was born into this life, right? And the strange thing is people look at me and think I've got this like hardlined God where we just right here all day, every day, just downloading, uploading, but it doesn't happen that way. And so for me, it's affected my journey with anxiety because I feel pressured to put on a facade to ensure that other people do not feel uncomfortable in their faith walk because I'm struggling with mine, right? And then it also makes me feel disconnected at times from my church family because I can't be struggling. I'm the pastor's daughter. I can't be anxious. I don't have room to be sad. I should be able to like super pray to God and be fine, right? And so what it makes me do is mask my anxieties, which makes it harder to deal with them because you have to walk out in the world and be happy go lucky, everything's fine. And then you go home and you're struggling and you miss the whole purpose of a faith community, which is that support and that love and that nurture. So there are times when I feel disconnected from that because of it, which makes my anxiety worse. Anxiety gets better in community with support.
I will even take it a step further than just like, okay, you're a Christian, pray it away. I have heard from an older, I don't really have a lot of cousins that are like my age. So the ones that you would consider like aunties and uncles, they are still my cousins, but they are much older, like 10 years or 15. And they'll say, oh, well, Black people we don't get that. We get overwhelmed. And then I've heard the same thing with Christianity, and I won't say which relative, but a lot of them have grown. A lot of them have grown, and I appreciate that. But starting out, I was like, oh, I have a friend that's depressed, or I have a friend that has anxiety. Oh, well, we're Christians. We don't get that. We're overwhelmed. So at first, I denied that I was dealing with this stuff because I'm a Christian. I don't get anxiety. I don't get depressed. I get overwhelmed. And that's not true. You have to be able to recognize those things. But I agree with Bethany. When you're raised to be a certain way, and you feel like, especially with our personalities, it's like we're always happy. Like I get all the time. You get anxiety, like you just seem so like so happy, or you just seem so happy. So that is definitely challenging, or it has been. But luckily, I feel like as Christians, and even with this conversation, we're able to grow because we're needing to have conversations like this so that people understand and see that it is not something to be ashamed of. It is not something that is unheard of. It's actually very common.
Extremely.
Yeah, and Kayla, you just brought up something, a different layer to this that we
Okay.
didn't talk about. Just the fact of our culture as African Americans in this country.
Hmm.
Do not, first off, mental health, mental illness is kind of taboo in our country, in our
Absolutely.
culture,
Yes.
community. And so when we talked about anxiety, we're like, oh, you're just overwhelmed, or oh, you've got some stuff going on. You'll be all right.
Well,
Yep.
you just need to take a quick vacation.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Instead of dealing with the source of the problem, we always want to put a band-aid on a gunshot. For whatever
And
reason, we keep doing that.
the biggest part about forgiveness and forgiving yourself, I was stuck on for a long time. Like, if I had just listened to myself, and if I had just listened to my Air Force advisors and gone to therapy earlier and all this other stuff, then maybe, I'd still be. No, my past is my past. God
Mhm,
chose certain things for me.
mhm,
And so I can't sit there and be like, if I had just listened to those people and gone to therapy, no,
mhm.
I'm where I'm supposed to be right now. So that's a big thing, is forgiving yourself for not
Mhm.
acting quicker, or for listening to the past ways, or just like leaning into the, oh well, you're right, I'm just overwhelmed. You have to forgive yourself for that as well.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's not to say that we don't get over, but that anxiety happens when we are past the threshold of being overwhelmed.
Hmm.
Yup.
We don't.
Way past.
Yeah. So it's not that I don't disagree with people that saying, "Oh, you're overwhelmed." I'm like, no, I'm way past that point. I'm
It's a really
way.
good way to look at it.
We got a lot of comments in the comment section,
Mm.
so oh boy, we got a whole bunch. Let me
Oh,
just.
Ooh.
So, um, the biggest
talk
thing
to
I've
us.
seen about the biggest thing I've seen so far is about the mask that Bethany mentioned, and how people who are connected to church leadership um, have to wear this mask. And I mean,
Yeah.
my mom put it perfectly. My dad was a pastor, and so having to be a pastor's wife, she had to wear this mask as a first lady. And
Right.
I would say, for me, like I had to wear that as well as the preacher's kid, especially the male's preacher's kid, especially the male preacher's pastor's kid who has the inkling of the call on him. So it's like growing up, you had to have this kind of
Mhm.
stoicness about you, because if anyone got a lick of your humanity, they automatically, oh, this, he's not that, she's not this, she's not that. God didn't touch them, etc., etc., etc. And
Mm.
PJ good too. PJ said, I think the concept of praying it away also connects us from the reality of our humanity. When in fact, dealing with anxiety can be addressed and received through fellowship of communing about it and what's causing it. Most definitely. And we will either this part, or depending on how long this is, part two, talking about the community supports that we have. So
Mhm.
let's keep going. Now let's look at the biblical and the theological portions about anxiety. So the next question we got: what scriptures have helped anchor you in your anxious season? So my wife was so kind to pull mine up, but
I
reference
have
is
mine on my other phone.
she referenced Philippians 4, 6 through 7. So don't worry about anything, but in everything, with prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and your minds in Christ Jesus. I actually preached on this a while back. Um,
Hmm.
but this is the answer for me. This is what has kept me grounded. That don't worry about anything. And it's like, Paul, why are you telling me this when not only am I worried, I'm certain you was worried when he was writing this, but in prayer and supplication. So we're going back to this. It requires more than just prayer. You have to give your thanksgiving and let your requests be known to God. God is almost commanding us to let God know what's going on in our lives. And it's not for God, it's for us. Because a lot of times we feel that even in our anxiety and our self-imposed shame, that we can't bring our stuff to God, which is the whole point of God telling us to come to God. My dad always said, if if the God you serve can't handle your good, your bad, and your ugly, that's not a God worth worshiping. So if you can't bring it all to God, then it's really a waste of time to worship and observe that God. So this is mine. This is the one I think of often. Bethany, Kayla, what about you?
So mine is Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. I have everything I need. He lets me rest in fields of green grass and leads me to quiet pools of fresh water. He gives me new strength. He guides me in the right paths as He has promised. Even if I go through the deepest darkness, I will not be afraid, Lord, for you are with me. That's right there. I stop there every time because every time my concern is, am I doing the right thing? Am I making the best possible choice to have the best possible outcome? Because the circle of the things, right? This. I stop myself and I go, you have all you need. He's walking with you through it. Whatever choice you make, if you are actually listening, is the right choice, even if it feels wrong, even if you're anxious about it. And I over and over, you know, keep it in my back pocket.
Mine comes from Second Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, and it is for God has not given us the spirit of fear,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm.
but of power and of love and of sound mind. So the biggest part of my anxiety is usually like taking it back to childhood is like nerves. And you can have good anxiety. A lot of people don't know that, but and it's like being excited about some stuff. But mine comes from usually being scared of something or scared of what's to come. So it's just like my grandma Deacon Jones, she says all the time, don't be afraid. And God didn't give you the spirit of fear. Like that's the spirit of fear, and it can be completely replaced with joy and all types of other stuff. So I try, if I'm nervous about something, I'm thinking of the good outcome. Of course, you still have that bad outcome in the back of your mind, which is where the anxiety is coming from. But I focus on the joy that I either have or that's coming.
Great. So Pastor Johnson says Psalms 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not into your own understanding, and in all ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. That was in the good news. That was in the King James Version. So one of my go-tos. The NRSV says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not rely on your own insight. So yeah, there is a anchoring of trust that we have to first do to trust that God is going to help us in these anxious moments. So trust is the foundation of being with God in anxiety.
Yeah.
Hmm. That's what faith
So
is.
Mm-hmm.
Deacon Foster said, I realized I had anxiety actually as a child. It began manifesting itself when I was being molested by a family member. So anytime a male would come to visit, I would run and hide until they left. Fast forward to once I became a mom, that anxiety really ramped up because she didn't want the same thing to happen to her children. Because of a trauma in her mind, she thought that protecting her kids by not allowing them to go over to sleepovers or hanging out with friends, but she was actually holding on to her trauma. Wow. Wow.
Wow.
So the reason that I safeguard the kids the way that I do is for the same reason. It doesn't matter who you think you're safe around with. You just always want to make sure that something like that doesn't want to, you don't want that to happen to any of them. So there's always that Hawkeye, even though those aren't, I don't have any biological children, but I am
Those are our
I
babies.
am,
Those are our babies.
yes,
I
those
do
are
it.
our babies. So it's like it doesn't matter. I've been in a store before and I've seen a kid, just walk off from their parent, or I went to a coffee shop and I saw, the mom was overwhelmed and the little boy just like ran across. I'll get up and knowing that I'm an adult that would never. I go and make sure that kid is okay because I've had the same similar fears. So I hear you, Deacon Foster. I do. I understand.
And before we
Yeah.
go to the before we go to the next thing, I want to just affirm what Deacon Foster just said, because that was first off, that was a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Second, that's a hard thing to do on the internet. So
Yeah.
I just want to make space and hold space for that statement and just say, we affirm you, we love you, we appreciate your vulnerability for sharing that.
Mhm.
That is a real fear. That is a real fear, especially like that's a fear for me as a father, and not just for my daughter, but for my son too, because those
Mhm.
situations don't discriminate.
Mhm.
So that's a very real thing, and I can only fathom the anxiety that you had as you were a mom dealing with that, having dealt with your trauma as a child. So I do thank you, and I just want to let light shine and just show you love for that one, because that
We
was a
love you.
powerful, vulnerable moment.
Yeah.
Yes. Mama D says Psalms 91, 1 and 2 states, he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High. I just preached this one too.
Come
I was like,
on.
wait a minute.
The Almighty. I will
Right.
say of the Lord, you are my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Man, y'all out
Mhm.
here making me feel good about myself. I know y'all ain't doing it on purpose, but still, the two scriptures that we have said, two of the ones that we have said so far, I have actually preached those, so it's funny. it's just awesome. But it also, for me, it speaks to how much I want to preach on these kind of topics because
Mhm.
a lot of times in other churches, not in Mayfield, but in other churches, we're not talking about these real conversations behind the pulpit, let alone
Yeah.
like this. So it's really good
Right.
and encouraging to hear these and say, wow, that was the mindset that I had when I was working on the text. Or wow, like I really did preach that message from that passage. So yeah, it's really powerful, man. It's really powerful. And then we got one more scripture and then we'll go to the next question. PJ said Matthew 6:26. Look at the birds. They do not plant seeds, gather a harvest, or put it in barns, yet your Father in heaven takes care of them. Aren't you much more than the birds? And this helps him trust that God cares for him. And he don't have to worry about it if the Lord cares for him. And that he doesn't have to worry because God can take care of him. Amen. Amen. So let's go on to our next question,
Amen.
which kind of ties in actually to what PJ's scripture was. So how do you understand God's role in the midst of anxiety? Do you believe God is present in our mental and emotional struggles? So
Mm.
I I envision God in these moments kind of screaming at me to get my attention. Uh, God notices that I've gone, I'm going, and falling, and God's like, "Hey, Daniel," like God is screaming to say, "I am here, but you are not. You're too busy wrapped in your own mind to see that I'm here. I'm here, and your wife and your children and your support group. I need you to get it together to hear me." So that's where God is in the midst of my anxiety. But the good news is that God is in the midst of my anxiety. I don't see God all the time. And sometimes it takes someone to snap me back into reality to remind me that, hey, God's right there. And God sounds like my dad a lot of the time. He's complaining about how I told you I've been here, but why are you not listening? So, and do you believe that God is present in your mental and emotional struggles? Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. I may not see it in the moment,
Mhm.
but when I come down from my anxious episode and looking back, I see what I called in our last one those glimpses of resurrection, where I see God showing up in ways that I did not see when I was in the moment.
Mhm. Um, I think of God's role in the midst of my anxiety as Him teaching me things because I'm hard headed and an overthinker, right? So, in my overthinking and my zeal for perfection, every time in the midst of an anxious moment, He takes the time to remind me that it's progress, not perfection. And it always comes because I think about all these scenarios, right? All these things that could possibly happen, all the crazy, crazy wild stories that I can come up with, wild, wild stories. And then something beautiful happens and he goes, see what I'm saying?
That's me
Chill out.
too.
See what I mean? Calm down. And I'm like, okay, but see what happened was, right? But I think in the midst of all of that, I know that he's present because even in those moments of anxiety, I'm able to function, right? So in the midst of it's kind of like okay, so I'm a beach girl, so it's kind of like a hurricane, right? You've got all this crazy happening on the outskirts of it, but you get closer to the center of it and it's calmer and calmer and calmer, right? Intensity of feeling, but not as much of the the like intense damage.
Yeah.
So I feel like in the midst of all of that, I've got all of this swirling around me and I'm in the center of it and God goes, "Boop, remember, this is the thing that I need you to be focused on." So every time I have an anxious moment, it's something that I need to learn or grow from. And I feel like God does the same thing with me. He's like, "Hello, hello, hello. I've been
Oh, I think we lost Bethany.
Okay, I was like that. I was
Yeah.
like, is my phone?
and then I snap out of it. I
Um,
look back at My interwebs doesn't like me. So no,
You're back.
I'm away from
I spoke too soon.
Go ahead, Kayla.
Okay. I have this show that I love, and I love you know me, you know I love cartoons, and it's called Bless the Heart. It's actually based on a family that is in
uses
North
my
Carolina.
over
Oh, okay, it's a family based on in North Carolina, but the lady that it's based on, she actually can speak to Jesus. He's like a painting on the wall. He'll come off, and they'll have conversations. And one day, she kind of was just like, you know, I can make all these bad decisions, and it's not going to be a problem. And it was like small things based on morality. And when they finally come together and they speak again, it's like, why weren't you there? I needed you. And he showed up in the pen she was writing with. He showed up in the chicken nuggets that she ordered. He showed up in the tiniest little ways. And I thought that that was also very funny because just like Bethany was saying, like you never actually see it when you feel like you can see it when you're in the midst of all of those things. But I feel like he's there when I'm using my coping mechanisms. Like I'll try to point out certain things in the room to ground myself. That's a really good grounding exercise. And I always tell people as soon as you start joking about things in the room, that's when you're okay. Or like I was having a bit of a panicky moment because of school and you know like job opportunities and some other stuff, and then that kid ran around the corner and I was like, oh, gotta go get that kid. It was able to, there's certain things that I'm able to snap back from, and even if I'm beyond that point, or before I get to beyond the point of physically, you know, starting to feel it, even when I'm saying like, calm down, you're good, you're fine, that's how he shows up for me because it's like, hey, in the back of my mind, I know that he doesn't want me to go beyond that point to where it becomes a physical manifestation of, you know, anxiety. So that's how he shows up for me. Bethany, did you want to, are you back? Do you want to continue? Okay,
I don't know.
you're back. I hear you. I hear you.
Hi. No, I mean
Hi.
I was bringing it to a close, but it's, you know, I feel like we all see it the same way. He's in the tiny
Details.
things, in the rebound from it, in the learning experience after it's over.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Lakira's comment.
Yeah, Pastor Johnson said the church is very bad
Mhm.
at these things, especially when anxiety is crushing a lot of leaders who suffer in silence. Do you know how many preachers have died prematurely
Mhm.
from the literal stress and anxiety they go through? And instead of their support group, and even I say the congregation telling them, hey, we need you to chill and go get some help, they're just running. And then the next thing you know, there is the Facebook post that actually is an announcement of transition and not the poorly made ones where someone's actually just preaching. So, yeah, we have to be mindful that even our leaders go through anxiety. I'm a leader. I go through anxiety. I have no problem mentioning that. And as you clearly see, I preach about it often. So, anxiety is a
Mhm.
real thing that we all deal with because we're all human. We are not perfect.
Mhm.
My name is not Jesus Tyrone Christ.
Not Tyrone.
Oh, no.
It's not me.
Tyrone,
Oh,
It's me.
I
the
So
wasn't
door.
ready.
just saying, that's not me. That ain't me. All right, so we're gonna
But I mean,
go ahead.
I think that that's an unfortunate comparison that people make. They make Christ this monolithic character when Christ had so many facets to his personality. There were anxious
Literally.
moments. Notice in the Bible, he was like, hey, so like God, remember when you had, but I'm in this garden and I'm like, but we could not though. And that would also be super cool,
Yep.
right? That's a moment of anxiety for Christ. He knew his whole purpose for being human and was still like, I'm kind of freaked out by this. Could we not?
He only made peace with it towards the end. You're right.
Right. Right. And even then, his
Right?
was just
Right? So people don't acknowledge that.
yeah. And even in his peace, Kayla, his peace was just not my will, God. Let your will be done. And it doesn't even necessarily say. And again, we're kind of stepping into the mind of Jesus, and we don't know all the things. But who's to say that that was just his grounding mechanism? It didn't take away from his anxiety.
Right.
Ooh,
That.
I didn't even consider that.
And I
Yes.
was grander than what he was feeling in that moment. And so it
Right.
was Jesus acknowledging where he was, as we would say in therapy, stating the facts.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, yep.
Let this cup of suffering pass because he knows what's coming next. But
Mhm.
he has this epiphany and this realization that not my will, God, not what I want, because it's in counter with what you want, but let your will still be done.
Mhm.
So for me, this is just me. For me, this is where the salvific moment happens because Jesus had an option if he wanted to. I'm almost
True.
certain that if he had said, "Nah, I'm good, God would have honored it because God's not a person going to force you to do anything." But he recognized that what he had to do was bigger, was grander than everything that he was struggling with in that moment. And so what he did was he said, all right, God, I ain't feeling it, but not my will. Let your will be done." Which eventually became his will because when he was up there, he still could have got off. He wanted to. We hear it all the time. The tens of thousands of legions of angels could have came. So we know that he could have come down if he wanted to, but he did it, and still saved somebody in the process of him dying.
I was just about to say he in that process, and sometimes that can actually help with anxiety. Like I said, going after that kid, it's like I was like, hey, 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 I might be freaking out internally, but I want to make sure you're safe. Same
Right.
thing. He's sitting there freaking out internally, but he's like, hey, if you go ahead and confess your sins and you acknowledge that my father is real, then you can come with me. And the other one was like, no, nah, I'm good. But he went with him because he was like, wow, if you're at peace while you're going through the same thing that we are, but even more because our hands are bound and yours are nailed, then something must be higher. You know what I mean?
Mm, yeah, yeah. So we're gonna skip around a little bit. Um, so I want to really talk on the community aspect of Christians dealing with anxiety. So with that said, how can the church become a more compassionate space? I can just really leave it there, but for people struggling with anxiety.
First comes acknowledgement, which I think, we're in the first steps of that, which is really good. And a lot of times it has to do with not even just hearing it, like when you personally see someone, go through it that you love. Um, like for instance, my grandma didn't have a lot of experience with it, but this is her Kayla, like something she needs to learn about this. You know what I mean? And even my aunts decided to follow, see that through and be like, okay, well, what can we do? What can we learn? How can we help deal with this? And that's helped her. She's always been a compassionate person, of course, but that helped her see it in other people and be able to recognize things. And I know we've talked about your sermons as well. And anytime that she hears you even mention it, she's like, you need to go back. You need to watch it because Daniel was talking. She has completely immersed herself in, educating herself and others in anxiety because she has somebody who's going through it. And I feel like most of us are compassionate in that way, but even you just like giving sermons on it helps people realize because like the two of you have said, I might be third generation, but you guys have like you PK status, one, and then two, you're a reverend. So it's like there's different levels to it. And I feel like with my conversations that I have with the kids, even when I had to take a break and I came back, Dr. Wanda and Lola got to see me, tell them like, hey, I need to have a break because I was going through a lot of stuff and I'm not going to be able to be myself for you guys if I'm not okay. So letting them know on a, teacher slash mentor level is one thing. And then having, a PK that helps run everything, a pastor's kid that helps run everything and is always having a sunny disposition, you coming on here and bravely saying like, hey, I have moments where I'm not okay and I'm masked and girl, me too. Me too. But you have people who are able to see through the masking and I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it's annoying because it's like, I want a mask right now. And it's like, no, no, no. I see you. you're not okay. And then you have levels, go even up one more. You have a reverend who's sitting here preaching about it. And it's like, wow, if he goes through it, then it's okay for me to go through it. It's that being able to, again, on different levels say, hey, we all go through this. That is top tier. That is the best way I know that it can help.
Mm-hmm. I like it. I'm okay. So I'm looking at some of the comments too. Lola.
Yeah,
Okay.
brought it, but
Okay.
wait till we all said something. But since you brought it up, so we're gonna go ahead and go
Well,
right to it.
because
Yeah. So my wife said, "Watch how you talk to people."
Yep.
LOL to soften the blow, but she knows she meant to not.
I mean, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, so I'll take that a step further, right? Because my thing is be intentional about how you listen to people.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I so many times where I'll be in church, right? And Kayla says somebody sees through a mask and they're like, "You're not okay." And I'm like, "I'm holding it together. Don't break my mask."
Mhm.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's a struggle at times because you expect people to talk in a nice and a kind way, in a
Mhm.
church setting, but all in all, they ain't doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're not, as they say, talking in the love of Christ. Yeah. So let's see. We got PJ says, I believe the church can become a more compassionate space by making the effort to be present for those who are dealing with anxiety and offering support even to talk to people. Sometimes we don't even want to hear about what people are going through. Absolutely. That is 100% on the money. Because a lot of times we don't. We don't.
That's true.
I can tell you so many times. I can tell you so many occurrences that have happened, especially when my father died and I was having moments. And you hear things and it's like you want to respond, but then you realize you're just responding in your anxiety, and in my case, responding into your grief. And so you gotta walk a very tightrope with those kind of things. Yeah.
Mhm.
Deacon Foster said, having a platform like this, the church could educate the body on how to deal with mental illness and not take the stance of you need to get over it or it's not always about you. And
Ooh.
if I want to take it a step further, to that's a demon in you that needs to be cast out.
Oh
I have
Lord.
literally heard all three of those things before.
Yep.
Literally heard all three of them,
Mhm.
right? And I
Yep.
think I think people need to be more inclined to just listen. Just the ministry of presence is what people who are dealing with anxiety need. I don't need you to fix it. You can't fix it.
Yeah.
I
And
agree.
so for those
Go
who
ahead.
may not know, the spirit of the power of presence is just being with someone in that space, being with them in that moment. You don't got to say nothing. You ain't got to do nothing. Just being with them. And the great example I give is Job's friends before they went off on the deep end. They just sat with him for 7 days and cried with him. For me, that's power of presence. Like I said, this was before they started saying it's your fault, but that's what they did first. They
Right.
with him for 7 days and cried. Yeah.
Sometimes, or not even sometimes. Yesterday, I had to educate somebody very close to me that's not family, and I was trying to say like, "Hey, I'm just having an anxious day, and I just, feel blah 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 blah." And this person decided to say, "Well, this is how, you could have avoided this, or this is how you could fix it." And I'm just like, "Okay, you're gonna have to realize or recognize the difference between a depressive episode and an anxiety attack slash moment. So with depression, sometimes you can give encouragement, like, you know what, hey, this is how we could have handled this. Versus like Daniel saying, sometimes you just need to sit with them in it. And you can do stuff like, okay, ground or like so that they don't get to the point of where it's, physically manifesting. But at the same time, most of the time you just need comfort.
Yeah.
When it
Mhm.
comes to anxiety, you just need comfort. Don't try to fix it. If I come to you, it's for comfort. And that
Mhm.
has to do with the education process.
Yeah. Mama D said something interesting. She said you also have to watch how you listen too. And your situation can often make you hear what was not intended. And
Come
I agree
on.
Hmm.
100% because when you are not in the right state of mind and you hear something, you may interpret it differently than what was initially said. And that's why it is important for us to not say anything in the moment. If it rubs us the wrong way, but we know that we're not in a right state of mind, to come back after we are in a better space to ask that question, like, hey, I heard you say this. This is how I interpret it. Is that what you meant? And if not, what did you really mean in the when it came to that? So I agree. That's powerful. Yes, yeah. And my wife said everything can seem like an attack to him. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
100%. And I have
Reverend,
I have had to learn in the past to. That's when I know I'm triggered. If when I feel
mhm.
I'm being attacked, that's when I know I'm activated. That's when I know my anxiety is through the roof. It has taken a lot of therapy for me to recognize that for me, I know that I am in a moment when I feel like I feel like I am Job where I have to make good on my name when I don't, I did nothing wrong. But the way in which my mind is in that moment, I have to tell myself like, look, you're not being attacked. This is just because you are activated, because you were triggered by something that was said, and your body is merely in fight mode, not flight,
Hmm.
straight up
Um,
fight mode.
I didn't know what exactly to say to this person, but now I have an answer. I'm like, that just you just explained unintentionally like why I had the response that I had yesterday. And now I know what to say because you're right. You are sometimes I felt like most of that conversation was an attack, even though I know there were good intentions. And instead of trying to be like, this is what I needed and da da da, I now know what to say. Because and again, this is why conversations like this are so important because as a community, we are able to see it from different perspectives. And, you know, me being friends with both of you, I'm able to see it from different perspectives. And okay, sorry. I just realized I was like, oh, wait a minute. I was triggered. Oh,
Yeah, no, you're good. That's why we have
Yeah,
conversations
that's why
with
we do this.
stuff like that. That it helps you realize like, oh wow, maybe that's what it was going. Maybe that's what's going
yeah,
on. And
I
imagine
was triggered.
and it's crazy because think of, and this is not just for us, it's for everyone that's listening. Think of
Hmm.
how many friendships, relationships have been destroyed because you were triggered and you didn't know about it and you responded in the worst way possible.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And
There
you just didn't
so
know.
many.
Yeah, you just didn't know. You
Mhm.
just didn't know.
So I wanna pause
Mhm.
before we get too far. Reverend Lakira put a great comment in, and I don't want us to miss it.
So one thing the church can do is to be open to the reality that it is not mental health friendly at the core 100%. So many things that religion, not relationship, but religion have done. A lot of it is polarizing people who don't fit the ideal model of a believer. We are
Hmm.
all
Mhm.
not, and we have some needs that are not being met because we don't meet people where their faith is. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would take that step further, Reverend Kier, and I would ask, what is the ideal model of a believer?
Oh, okay. So she answered that
I see.
with this.
Not to mention, we have been programmed to believe that God wired all believers the same way. So even things like neurodivergence and the manifestations thereof are punished and demonized as well. As someone who's a special education teacher, you're speaking my language. You're speaking my language. So it is everyone who does not fit in the predetermined box that religion has created. Um, yeah, and let's be honest. For many of us in this room right now, and many of us that are listening, in the minds of religion, we don't fit that model either. The simple fact that we're even doing this does not fit the typical model that you would expect in church spaces.
Hmm.
So, in the minds of the people who say these things, we are not ideal believers simply because we recognize our humanity just as much as we recognize the God that gave us said humanity.
Right.
Yeah. So we only got 4 minutes. So I don't want to again belabor the time. So I want to just briefly talk about some of the practical things. We've talked about them throughout this, but so what are some practices that have helped you manage your anxiety spiritually and emotionally? So for me, lately, I have been running a lot, which is crazy because running was not usually my jam at one point, but I've been running a lot. So just walking, and then I'm like, oh, I'm running now. So I've been running. But something that Kayla said, I do a lot of grounding techniques and activities and strategies and stuff. I also just the biggest thing that's worked for me because I'm a logical person. I say, let's look at the facts. What can I control? What can I not control? What I can't control, I change. If I cannot control it, then I just say, well, it is what it is. I have no control of it, so I can't let it affect my emotions the way it is affecting it right now.
Grounding is the best thing for me as well. Trying to see things in the room. And like I said, I know when I'm joking about things, I'll be like, okay, that's when I'm physically okay. But also not letting, as Granda says, like not letting it get to the physical point, or like I've been saying, physically manifesting like within yourself. So I will try to, like you said, focus on the facts and be like, okay, and that's why I was triggered yesterday, because it was like, okay, well, this could have been done and this could, I'm just like, well, yes, that was in my control. It is no longer in my control because of certain things that I did. I don't know. But it's like, what can I control right now versus what could have been done is not helpful. So grounding is really good. And then the whole like, just telling yourself like, hey, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay. I talk or speak really fast, so it's like I have to say it really fast so that I can keep reminding myself like, you're fine. You are physically fine. You are in a safe space. You are okay. You're okay. It's okay.
So I my focus is very different with what I do. Like I monitor very heavily what I consume, right? So y'all two know I have crazy food allergies. All right. I'm allergic to all the things. I'm allergic to air or whatever. That's the running joke. But also, I monitor what I put into my body because mental health is physical health, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I eat affects how I think. How I think affects how my body functions. So I'm very careful about what I eat, feeding my body good things, but also feeding my soul and my mind good things. So like if I'm having an anxious day, I'm not going to listen to that good, Bilal radio station. I'm a single Black woman in America
Mm-mm.
who about to turn 40. I'm not listening to love songs that ain't good for my mental, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna meditate. I'm gonna have praise and worship on the way to work. If work is crazy, I'm having praise and worship at work. Do you feel me? Right? I feed my mind and my soul the things that will help me stay focused on what I
Yeah,
know is truth.
yeah. I do. I put on music too, but mine is more so gorilla. So yeah,
Yeah, I know. I know.
yeah,
Thug
I watch
life. Thug
cartoons.
life over
So
there.
many cartoons.
I do
I
that
watch
too.
so
I
many
do that too.
cartoons.
so
Because they're not usually real, but and even the ones that can be kind of real, but yeah, I watch cartoons. If I need to tune out all the negative, I stay off of social media. Oh my goodness, that's a
That
huge
part.
one. Stay off of social media if you are not doing well mentally. Stay
yeah,
off.
Oof,
definitely.
girl,
Yes, don't do that. All
don't
right.
do it.
So I want to close us with this last question: how can someone beginning their journey towards healing today? How can they begin it, even if they feel overwhelmed or stuff? So
Hmm.
first thing I can say is I'm always reminded of Peter on the boat when Jesus beckons him on the water. That's the first thing. That's the spiritual. That's the preachy part. So that water was not calm. That water was shaky. If I recall correctly, they thought Jesus was a ghost at one point. And so Jesus, basically is telling me in that thing that I need you to focus on me, regardless of what's going on around you and even below you. It looks like you're gonna drown, I know, but if you focus on me, like I'm gonna take care of you. I'm gonna take care of you. On the flip side of that, my wife said it perfectly. Go to therapy. Get some therapy.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately.
And dare I
Yeah.
say, get some medication. I'm on a great antidepressant that has helped me out
Oh, same.
Yeah.
Same.
Okay.
Same. That
Yeah.
good old Lexapro. You might have to try
Oh.
different medications. That's another thing. Not everything, just like not every not every level of faith fits us and everything like that. Same thing with medication. Try different things. If you don't like your first therapist, ask for another one.
Correct. Correct. And they won't be offended because that's part of their job. And I will
Yeah.
say
And that, they'll be
these
all right.
are, I consider these things God's grace in real
Mm-hmm.
time. These are the things that help us navigate these waters. And Mama D said another great thing: learn to recognize your triggers. That's what I have done in therapy. I have learned
Mhm.
to recognize my triggers, and I
Mm-hmm.
know what will trigger me 100%. And I know what I need to do when I get triggered. My wife knows what to do. If I'm telling her, hey, life is life and I'm about to go down on the deep end. Like we have another thing, have a plan in place.
Mm-hmm.
Have plans in place. That's one thing my therapist, that was an uncomfortable conversation her and I had about having a plan in place for when X, Y, and Z happens. So, um, yeah. Ladies, you got any other things you want to add before we close this out?
I got one.
Okay.
Find a person you trust to tell your truth to. One. You don't need a million. You need one. You need one person, like Kayla said, who can see through the mask that you live in, because we all do, so that we can function in the world, keep jobs, and pay bills. Let's be real. Find one person that you trust. It could be family, it could be friend, it could be mentor, it could be your therapist. But you need one person who is your lifeline when you don't want to do anything. When you don't have the strength to do any of the things, they need to be the person you can call at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're spiraling and go, help. One. You need them.
Um, I would say my faith-based one was definitely like um Noah and the Ark because I've always cared about as a kid when it depends on who you are, but I've always cared about like what people thought, and he did not. He was like, I might seem crazy to y'all, but I know what I'm doing, and then boom, most of the time I prove people wrong. So it's like kind of have to get away from that. And I agree with Bethany. I also agree with Daniel. My support people are not who you think they would be. Like Uncle Julian is actually on my emergency plan. So, stuff like that. I know that I can call Daniel because he goes through certain stuff. My grandma. So those are like usually my top couple of people who will not only like, reach out, but also follow up. Like, I remember the first time that Daniel followed up, I was like, what? What? I was like, what? But, just find people who go through not similar things if you feel like, because, he's the only one that I feel like goes through similar things. But, just like Bethany said, always have that one. And when something doesn't serve you, say no, say
Mhm.
no and stop. Like, immediately. Like, hey, you know what? Nope. That's my favorite word. Nope. You're not gonna, nope. So you don't, nope. Okay, nope. Because as a kid, I didn't feel like I could say no to certain things, but as an adult, you can
Yes. There is power in no.
say no. It is
Yes.
very easy to do. Well, it can be hard at first, but that's the first thing that you can do. That's the first step. Say no to what doesn't serve you.
Yeah. And I think remember to give yourself grace on this journey. It is a marathon, not a
Hmm.
sprint. Mental health is health, right? You got to feed your body, you got to feed your mind your whole life,
Yes.
right? So do not get frustrated with yourself when there are ebbs and flows, when there are mountains and valleys, because that's life. And give yourself the grace and the kindness that you would give to others. You deserve to hear from yourself what you tell to others. Be
Amen.
That
kind
is
to you
so true
as you
because
make
they
the
always say treat people how you would want to be treated. Reverse that. And you're super kind. You give advice to people and you're always telling them to take care of themselves. You need to do that too.
Yeah.
You got to do that for
yeah,
yourself as well.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
that's the greatest commandment, right? Like,
yeah.
Hmm.
love your neighbor as yourself. If you can't love yourself, how can you fully love your neighbor fully?
Mm,
And if you can't do that, how can you really love God with your entire being? So,
Hmm.
it starts with us and it extends out to the community, which in turn helps us to fully and authentically love God with all of who we are. So,
Yeah.
with that said, y'all, thank you so much for coming on, everyone. We really appreciate it. Deacon Foster, this will not be the last one. I think our next one's either in May or June, but we're going to be
Okay.
talking about faith and depression. So be on the lookout for that one in the coming weeks. But yeah, thank you all for tapping in, and we will see you all next time on Life Beyond the Pew. Take care.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, guys.